for various reasons, but let's be real, ego. Oh, the players were big on ego during this entire situation. Like you heard me say before, they turned this into some kind of a social cause for them. So enter in Draymond Green, the star forward for the Golden State Warriors, somebody who, look, is he's not known to keep his opinions to himself. But a lot of times his opinions are idiotic. And in this case,
Draymond Green recently shared some thoughts on the WNBA labor situation, and honestly, the take deserves some pushback. The argument being made is that the players should have held out for a strike right after locking in a fresh media rights deal. That is a wild position to take. The league just signed a major broadcasting agreement. Reports suggest the WNBA may have turned a profit for the very first time, with players even receiving a net revenue share bonus. And the suggestion is that this was the moment to dig in and walk off.
And in this case, schizo. You got to be kidding me. In no world was it a good idea, or would it have been a good idea, for these players to have went on strike. Oh, but Draymond believes they should have held their own and went on a strike right after getting a brand new media rights deal. Right after actually what looks like...
That logic does not hold up. Here is the reality of where things stood. The player base had already burned through a massive chunk of goodwill over the past several months. A large portion of casual fans had tuned out or turned negative because of how certain situations were handled publicly. Ego played a huge role in that erosion. The product was gaining real traction largely on the back of one person's star power, and the rest of the roster of personalities had done real damage to that momentum.
Getting a brand new media rights deal. Right after actually what looks like they may have turned a profit for the first time because a net revenue share bonus was given. Right after that happening, he says they should have held their ground and went on strike. Good Lord. It seems Draymond is trying to get invited to the social justice cookout. Is that what we're doing? Is that what you're doing, Draymond? Trying to hang out with the milk stud and...
Walking into a strike under those circumstances would have been catastrophic. History backs that up. Major League Baseball went dark for years after the work stoppage in the early 90s. The NHL took a serious hit as well. Both of those leagues had decades of deep fan bases to cushion the blow. The WNBA does not have that cushion.
Out with the milk stud and some of the... I mean, come on. Why else would... I mean, what would even have you... And of course, it's... You notice it's always okay to say stuff like this after the CBA signed, sealed, and delivered. After the fact. Good God. Draymond has never been shy from speaking his mind. This time he turned his attention to the evolving landscape in the WNBA. The league recently finalized a new CBA.
It has been propped up financially by the NBA for most of its existence. A strike would not have applied pressure. It would have torched the whole thing. Green's reasoning rests on the idea that most players do not depend entirely on WNBA salary, so they could afford to sit out. They have overseas leagues, unrivaled, endorsements, other income streams. But that argument falls apart quickly. Overseas income is not leverage.
Following weeks of negotiations. While he celebrated the Women's National Basketball Players Association reaching a new and beneficial deal, Green believes the players had more leverage than they actually used and made it clear they could have pushed even further. They had zero leverage. Okay, one player in the league's got leverage. One.
Unrivaled is not leverage. And the endorsement conversation only applies to maybe half a dozen names: Caitlin Clark, Aja Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers, Sophie Cunningham. The vast majority of roster players are nowhere near that conversation. There is also an interesting wrinkle that rarely gets discussed. As WNBA salaries climb, the league becomes more attractive to international players who are currently competing in European leagues. Some of those players are genuinely better than certain WNBA roster spots.
The rest of them? Nah. You got to be shitting me. Nike Agumake? Who is coming out to watch her play? Honestly, seriously, Breonna Stewart, she can play ball. She can ball out there. Come on. Stop that nonsense. Some of these, I mean, oh God. Quote.
Raise the pay ceiling high enough, and some of those overseas athletes start looking at American rosters differently. That is a competitive pressure that current players may not be fully accounting for. What the players actually received was a 5.5 times increase in compensation. Trying to frame that as insufficient to the general public is a losing battle. Most working people would consider that a life-changing raise. Going on strike to reject that offer while demanding more from a league that barely broke even would have turned public opinion against the players in a very permanent way.
Quote. I was definitely in favor of them locking out because as a good of a deal as it is, I always think you can get better. And personally, I don't think probably 80 to 90% of the women in the WNBA does not solely depend on the WNBA revenue as their revenue. And unlike the NBA, players can't hold their ground and end up with these awful deals to save their lives, in large part due to the main.
Green is someone who speaks without a filter and that occasionally produces sharp observations. This was not one of those times. The players did not have the kind of leverage that justifies a work stoppage. One player in that league moves the needle. The rest are replaceable in the eyes of the casual fan, and that is the hard truth of the leverage situation.
These awful deals to save their lives, in large part due to the main source of money for probably 98% of the guys. And so guys be wanting to get back to playing. Guys be wanting to get back to playing? Okay. Wow. The WNBA has seen increases in television revenue, attendance, investment, driving the league's upward trajectory. Still, Green believes that the growth itself was the very reason players had the upper hand and could maximize their benefits. Guys,
calling this moment the peak of player power and then advising them to throw it all away on a strike makes no practical sense. The official salary figures are out for Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, Angel Reese, and Aaliyah Boston, the players most likely to hit max contract territory. Among the 2023 draft class, those are really the only realistic max candidates. For 2024, Hatton and Angel fit that picture. Layla Khan is an interesting case. She could end up there, but nothing is confirmed yet.
Just like the old Rose rule in the NBA, we're going to call it the Caitlin rule. So, ironically, if Caitlin goes and wins MVP this year, she's actually eligible for the Supermax in 2027. And this is why people are talking about Kelsey Mitchell and trading Kelsey Mitchell, by the way. It's not that Kelsey Mitchell's bad. Some people just don't think Kelsey Mitchell fits, i.e. a Venom. I disagree with that. I think if Caitlin, what the reality is that the expectation was, and this is what
Bueckers, though, is firmly in the 2025 conversation. What's now in play is something being called the Caitlin rule, named after Clark, who was the first to reach the threshold that triggers it, similar to how the NBA has the Rose rule. Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Bueckers all qualify under this provision. The significance here is that if Clark wins MVP this season, she becomes eligible for a Supermax as early as 2027. That's a big part of why the Kelsey Mitchell trade discussion keeps coming up. It's not about Mitchell being a bad player or a poor fit. It's about cap math.
Expectation was. And this is what they had very much implied, that the rookie contracts weren't going to scale up. So what they'd implied was that Caitlin Clark, Angel, or Aaliyah Boston, so that this season, Caitlin Clark was going to make 80K and Aaliyah was going to make 90K. That was the way that it was spoken about. And funnily enough, when it comes to scaled contracts, like Caitlin making 200K more than Angel Reese is kind of wild, because what is now happening with the contract scale in the WNBA is that
the original expectation under the old structure was that Clark would earn around 80K this season and Boston around 90K. Under the new scale, Clark making roughly 200K more than Angel Reese is a notable shift. On the bright side for Indiana, landing the 10th pick works out reasonably well. Salary-wise, picks 9 through 15 all earn the same figure. The first overall pick comes in at $500K, and it steps down from there, with picks 9 through 15 leveling out. Anyone outside the first round earns the rookie minimum, full stop.
That thankfully the Fever actually, by getting the 10th pick, are doing okay salary-wise, because the 9 through 15 are the same salary. It goes, the number 1 pick makes $500K, and it goes down and down and down and down and down. 9 through 15 make the same salary, and everyone past the first round makes a rookie minimum. Every single person that is not a first round pick is going to make the rookie minimum, which is pretty okay. So the thing is, you see that's 2028 salary with
Bueckers has maybe a 1% shot at MVP this season. Clark's odds are closer to 20%. But if Bueckers somehow wins it, her max flips to a supermax in 2028, and that creates a really difficult contract situation for Dallas to navigate. With Clark eligible for a max, the realistic scenario looks something like, either she takes the max or she stays on her rookie scale. There's no realistic version where Clark, like a Duncan in his 30s, leaves money on the table.
Salary with those. Yeah, they will. I don't know why I said, oh no, they could make a max, but actually they couldn't. And the thing is, there is a scary thing with Wings and Caitlin. Like, there is a word, like Paige has like a 1% chance of winning MVP. And okay, I'll give Caitlin like a 20% chance of winning MVP this year. But if Paige goes and wins MVP, see that max, that becomes super max in 2028. And it's one of those things where it's a...
LeBron, Bosch, and Wade famously took modest cuts $1 million off roughly $19 million, which barely registers proportionally. Asking Clark to take $500K instead of $1.5 million is a completely different ask. Boston's studio deal, while solid for her profile, probably sits in the hundreds of thousands range annually, not the kind of money that makes a salary cut easy to absorb. Mitchell isn't taking a pay cut to stay in Indiana either. The players who could realistically sign team-friendly deals with the Fever are Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hall.
In 2028. And it's one of those things where it's a really tough situation to get out of. So Caitlin being eligible for a max, and I'm thinking with her being eligible for a max, there might be a world where it's either you take the max or you're on your rookie scale. And look, I don't think Caitlin's going to take a pay cut. I think there's a world where the only time, if you look at any of the biggest players in the world, the only times any of them, like a Duncan took a pay cut in his 30s, in their prime, who has taken...
Natasha Howard won't. Mitchell won't. And Bree Turner is likely past the minimum threshold too. So the Fever face a clear choice. There is a world where Clark and Boston are both on supermaxes in 2027, eating up 40% of the cap between two players. Compare that to Las Vegas, where
Prime, who has taken big pay cuts. LeBron, Bosch, and Wade took like $1 million a year off. It was like $1 million a year. And that was making 18 instead of 19 million. Like, for Caitlin Clark might have to take $1 million a year and make $500,000 instead of 1.5. I don't see it happening. I don't see Caitlin Clark taking a $500K a year contract to keep Kelsey Mitchell on the team. I don't see Aaliyah Boston.
And the players aren't going to accept discounts, especially given that the entire premise of the new CBA was about getting players paid what they're actually worth. Asking Clark or Bueckers to leave money on the table for championship hopes isn't realistic. There's no guarantee of winning either. The Washington Mystics may actually be the team best positioned by this new structure. They hold the 4th and 9th picks in this draft, have Citron, Kiki Rice, and Shakira Austin potentially in the mix, and carry a supermax slot. They won't challenge the Fever next season, but in 1 to 2 years, that core could be very competitive.
Kelsey Mitchell on the team. I don't see Aaliyah Boston. Like, Aaliyah Boston's not making $2, $3, $4 million a year from that shoe deal. She's not. Like, I think she's making good money. But, like, that shoe deal is probably a couple of $100K a year. Like, she's not going to go and take a $500K pay reduction to keep Kelsey Mitchell on the team. Kelsey Mitchell's definitely not taking a pay cut to stay in Indiana. The only players that could take pay cuts to stay...
In hindsight, tanking was probably the smarter move for Indiana. Had they missed the playoffs, which nearly happened without Odyssey Sims' buzzer beater, they'd be sitting on the 4th pick right now. That potentially means a Wafam, or a dominant frontcourt piece like Lauren Betts, though Betts' pick-and-roll limitations are a real concern. At pick 10, the hope is someone like Kiki Rice falling, though Gabrielle Hack has cooled off and the options thin out quickly. Raven Johnson, J.C. Sheldon, and possibly Megan Gustafson tier players are more realistic at that range.
I could take pay cuts to stay in Indiana. I can see taking pay cuts to stay in Indiana are team-friendly deals. Like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull. Tash Howard's not taking a pay cut. Kelsey Mitchell's not taking a pay cut. I think Bree Turner's probably not going to play on the minimum. She's probably not playing on the minimum. So I'm looking at this and I'm just like, what exactly do fans want? It's like, Fever have to make a choice, obviously.
Clark's confirmed salary of $527K for this season won't create immediate cap problems. Lexi and Sophie are likely in that same neighborhood, and team-friendly deals from both remain plausible. But finding quality role players at those prices is genuinely difficult, particularly because Indiana's scouting infrastructure doesn't reach into international markets. If they were willing to look overseas, there might be creative solutions available. As it stands, that avenue appears largely unexplored.